So in this course, we're going to be installing InertiaJS with Vue 3 from scratch. So to get started with, I'm using Laravel for anyone who may be wondering how I'm creating the project. But otherwise, you can just, as you normally would with Laravel, you can just do compose or create a Laravel project. So if we head back in here, you can now see we have the ability to essentially create a site with Herd. This is only for macOS, by the way. It is based upon Laravel, and you can easily use Laravel instead, which is cross-platform. So we want to have no starter kit, and we'll call this Inertia Vue JS. We're not going to be setting up an authentication system because this is literally just showing you how to get started with it, how to install Tailwind CSS and everything from scratch. So you can potentially create your own site with or without an authentication system, or maybe you want to use something along the lines of allow socialite and not use any sort of registration option offered with Jetstream or other third-party applications you can use for authentication in Laravel. So I'm just going to store this in the Laravel Herd directory, and then while this is creating, let's just go into our InertiaJS page here. So essentially, when you install Jetstream and other applications like that, it comes pre-installed with Inertia. So you may wonder how to actually use this. So we can essentially start out with the server side here. So now that's installed, I've gone ahead and essentially opened up the project in PHP Storm. So as well, on top of everything else, it's also crucial to make sure that we use HTTPS, because I always prefer to have that set up, even if it's not necessary for this. It just makes life a bit easier. So I'm just going to go ahead and enable that. And then if we go back in here, we don't even need to set up a database for this project. It's up to you if you want to. Let's just go ahead and make sure this uses HTTPS. And we also want to have the terminal open. And let's just make sure we have a welcome page here. Perfect. Alright, so with that stuff done, again, we're not going to be using one of the starter kits, so we will just head on and install InertiaJS. So this is the server side, so this works with either React.js or Vue.js. I'm going to make a separate video on how to install this React.js tomorrow. But for now, let's just get started with Vue. We also want to create a root template, so in this case, you just head into Resources, Views, and we will just create it in here. So let's just call it create an app.blade.php file. Let's delete the welcome one. We don't need that anymore. And let's make sure we have the Inertia middleware set up. So this will essentially go ahead and create this middleware inside middleware handle inertia requests. So if we now head into app HTTP middleware, and you can see we have the handle inertia requests. In here, we can then share information with the Inertia app really easily. We also need to register this middleware in the kernel. So if we head back into the kernel here, you can see we have the web one here. Perfect. All right, so that's now sorted. All right, so we can now essentially create a response. So where will we create this response? We will start out with just closing the app folder. And then inside JavaScript, we're going to create a pages folder, and let's create a home.view. Perfect. Then let's just set a template here and call with a div. And we haven't installed Tailwind yet, but let's just have a BG blue of 200. And then just have hello world printed out here. Perfect. So we haven't even installed Vue.js yet, so we need to get started with that. So to get started with that, let's head in and install the Vue.js part. Perfect. Now while that's installing, we need to also set up the app with Inertia. So if we head back in here, let's just set that up there. Perfect. And again, you could create a different folder here and not call it pages. That's up to you. I'm just gonna call it pages because that makes the most sense to me. And what else do we need to get sorted? So outside of that, there's also the option to install Ziggy, which we can install in a little bit. Just want to make sure that this actually works as a starter. So let's just go in and create a route. Let's call this, actually let's just reuse this one and then just say Inertia render. Let's just call this home. And we then want to run npm run dev because otherwise this won't work. Because it's complaining about the fact that it doesn't have a manifested JSON file. So if you just go in now, let's refresh here. Okay, so there's a few other things we need to get installed, and this, for example, involves installing the Vue.js plugin Vue. So an example. So let's go in and install this here. Let's run dev again. All right. So there's other things we also need to do. So we also need to essentially tell Vue that we're using Vue. So if we go in here and say import Vue plugin, I think we call this Vue plugin. There we go. All right, so that's now sorted. So now we can actually render Vue.js template. But we also want to install Tailwind CSS. So let's head to Google. And let's get Tailwind CSS for Laravel installation. Page up. So in here we can literally just require just using npm. So I'm just gonna go ahead and close this again. Then we're gonna initialize the Tailwind CSS. Perfect. So what this does now is it creates a Tailwind JS file, and we can go in here and add the relevant content bit. In this case, this should do everything we need. And outside of that, we also obviously want to make sure that our app, the CSS file, has all the relevant bits here. So that's perfect. And then we want to require the resources here for the CSS file as well. So at the moment, we're only really requiring one of them. So now if we say npm run build as a starter, while this is building, we can just make sure that we can also run dev. Then let's go in and see why this is not loading yet. So it's definitely not loaded. So let's just double check that we're not supposed to pass this through in an array. There we go. So now Tailwind CSS is installed. That works perfectly fine. We can create a Vue component. Only other thing you want to do is basically, let's say, for example, we have another route here called about. Let's create a Vue file for this. And this code is about.vue. And just make sure that we now want to just rerun this so it doesn't complain. It should all be fine now. So what's going on here is that basically we want to be able to link to the About page. We want to just create a link here, and let's just link this to the About page. That works fine, but we can obviously, with Inertia, it comes inbuilt with the ability to use the link. So instead of using an anchor tag, let's use the link component. And that works perfectly fine as well. But I don't want to use the About Me page here. I actually want to name this, and I just want to use About. So to do this, we can essentially go in and install Ziggy Vue. And let's hit the installation page, make sure we properly install it. It uses Composer because it's a Composer dependency. And then we also want to add the routes to the Blade directive. There's a Blade directive in here. So if we head in and just say routes, perfect. Let's say npm run dev. Now, that won't be enough because we also need to have the JavaScript bit sorted out. So at the moment, this won't work because Vue.js isn't informed about it. So we also need to make sure we have the npm installed. So you can see we can install npm Ziggy.js here. I'm just going to create another terminal for this. And then inside app.js, we want to use Ziggy. So let's import it. And that's the sub-roamed application. So let's make sure we're actually properly importing it here. So I believe if we head back in here, we can import Ziggy like this. So basically, we actually don't want to import from PSI. We want to import it from --vendor /Ziggy/this, and then Vue.js. If you may want to use React, you could do it that way as well. And we want to import Ziggy Vue and use Ziggy Vue. Let's rerun this. And then we'll make sure that our Vite file also has the other relevant things. So we can actually head into the Vite config file again. So you can also just use Vue instead and have no options in here. And then inside the refresh, we may want to add in the ability to, for example, saying paths, and then say resources, views, config, delay 300, And I think that should be everything. Just checking why this may not be working. So we have Ziggy View does not exist on the app.js here. So in this case, I think we're importing it from the wrong one. It's not Vue.js, it's Vue.es. There we go. So what we can do now is head back into our home.vue page. And we can say HIF root and call this a cloud. So if I now click back, you can see it works just like before, but we can actually call the route by its name. So this is how you can install Vue.js and Inertia from scratch. You may also want to go in and use something like headless UI, for example, which is a super neat package here. You can just go in and install it here. I'm not going to show you how to get started with that in this video. This video is purely just showing you how to create your own app with InertiaJS from scratch in case you decide to go that path. Thank you very much for watching, and I would really appreciate a like and a subscribe to the channel. And if you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next video.